Hey guys, how's everybody doing today? I'm going to start off by talking about one of the coolest topics in networking. It's called router on a stick. Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to take a layer 2 LAN switch, trunk it or combine it with a layer 3 router, and make something known as a layer 3 switch. In other words, a switching device that can also move traffic between networks or between VLANs based on IP addressing and router functionality. I'm going to go ahead and switch right over and get started, bringing up Packet Tracer 5.33. One of the first things we need to do is we need to pick us a switch, and I'm going to go with the 2950-24. To make this truly router on a switch technology, what we need to do is we need to demonstrate how VLANs change things in this scenario. So I will bring up two generic computers. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect one of these devices to port 5 on the switch, and the other device we are going to connect to port 15. Now, one of the things we learn about VLANs is that when we set up VLANs on a switch, we actually create new broadcast domains. And another way of saying that is that we create individual networks. So theoretically, if I were to create VLANs on this switch and put each of these PCs in a different VLAN, they would be on a different network. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make this easy to look at, is I'm going to go to this PC, and we'll go to where we name it, and what we're going to do is we're going to name this guy 172.16.00, and we'll come over here and we'll name this guy 172.17. And by using the Class B private addresses and having one in the 16 network and one in the 17 network, what we're actually demonstrating is that these devices are on separate networks. And we'll go in here and put the IP configuration on this. We'll make this one 172.16.02 with a 16-bit mask, and we'll make its default gateway 01. And just to check that to make sure that it took, we'll do an IP config. And there you see we do have it. Then we'll come over here on this one, and we would go, where did I lose my IP configuration to? There we go. We'll come over here on this one, and we'll make this one 172.17.02. And its default gateway will be there. We'll come to the command prompt, do a little IP config, check it out, it does work. Okay, the next thing we need to do is go into this switch. Well, when we come into this switch from the CLI, first thing we'll do is we'll name the switch, and we'll call this, let's see, LAN switch. LAN switch with VLANs. How about that? That looks good. We'll make our enable secret password, please. Don't want to be too fancy. We'll do service password encryption like we normally do, so everything gets encrypted for us. We'll do our line console port, line console 0. We'll do the password there at please. Ask for it at login. Line VTY 0 to 15 because we have 6 incoming telnet sessions possible. We'll make the password please, and we'll ask for that at login. Now, I can come back, and if I do show run, you'll see my configuration that I do have an encrypted secret password. The name of my switch is LAN switch with VLANs. You see all 24 ports. Now, if I do show VLANs, excuse me, if I do show VLAN, sorry, it's a good time to talk about error. I typed in show VLANs. If you notice, look at where it put the little caret. It put the caret under the S. What did that tell me? Well, it knew what show meant. It knew VLAN. It didn't have a problem until it encountered the S. That's how I need to take the S off and just do show VLAN. We all make mistakes like that from time to time, forget simple commands, but it actually helps us interpret the problem. And the caret showed me where the mistake was. Well, if you notice now, I actually have 24 ports that are all assigned to VLAN 1, which is the management VLAN or the default VLAN. So what I need to do is I need to break these VLANs up to actually demonstrate how VLANs work. So if we come in here, what I'm going to do is I want to assign ports 5 through 10 to VLAN, let's say 510. So if I wanted to do that, what I would need to do is I would need to get the global mode. And since I'm wanting to do a range, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say interface. And where normally I would say like F0/1, F0/2, in this case, I'm going to do a range. And the range I want to do is F0/5 to 10. And if you notice, instead of going to config-if, it actually went to config range. So this is telling me that I'm configuring a range of addresses. And if I wanted to put these into a specific VLAN, I could say switch port access. Now when I say access here, you typically have two different types of ports you look at on switches. You have those that are set up for trunking and those that are set up for general access to the switch. We're not dealing with any trunking at this point, so these are definitely access ports, and we're going to assign them to VLAN 510. Where did I get 510 from? Well, the port started at 5 and ended at 10, so I just figured I would call this VLAN 510. Access VLAN does not exist. Well, of course it doesn't. We saw that a minute ago, that we only had a certain number of VLANs and all the ports were in the default range. Well, now that I created it, it's going to add them into that. If you want to take a look at that, we can go back and do show VLAN. And if you notice now, I have ports 1 through 4 and then 11 through 24 in port 1, but now we have a VLAN 510 that contains ports 5 through 10. So that actually worked. So what I can do now is I can go back and do config T, interface, range, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take port 15 through 20, and I'll put it together the same way. I'll make this VLAN 1520. What did it do wrong? What did it not like? Well, we have switch port access VLAN 1520. Invalid input detected. Actually, the problem is 1520 is too large. So what I would have to do is I would have to come back in here and name it something else. Since I named the other one 510, I'll name this one 520. And if you see, I didn't get an error now. I think the thing that you would want to notice is if you look at the VLAN assignments, 1002 through 1005 are some default groups that are added. You actually can't make a VLAN with a number greater than 1001 because it's not supported. So if we come back over here and do show VLAN again, you can see now that I have two different VLANs, VLAN 510, VLAN 520, and I have switches in each of them. Now, since I plugged these PCs into port 5 and to port 15, they're actually in different VLANs. So they do have addresses on the different VLANs, but if I tried to ping from one to the other, even though they're in the same switch, you'll find out that I can't successfully do that. If I come in here and tried to ping to the other host, 117.02, you'll see that my ping fails. Well, the reality is, if we set up these VLANs, which are in effect separate broadcast domains, there's nothing I can do without having routing between the two. Okay? So, at this point, there's several things I could do. The first thing I could do is I could go in here and I could get a 2621. The neat thing about the 2621 router being that when we look at it, I've got 2 Ethernet ports. I don't need serial ports, so I'm just going to cover these guys up. Turn it back on. And what I can do at this point is I can come back over here and get me another cable and go from Fast Ethernet 1 to port 6 and Fast Ethernet port 16. So if you see, I actually have 2 of them in there now. I can come in and I'm just going to name this guy RTA. Enable secret, please. Set up my service password encryption. Line con 0. Passwords, please. Ask for it at login. Line VTY04. Password, please. Ask for that at login. And I'm going to immediately start configuring my interfaces. If you notice I said line, it says that's wrong. Actually, what it needs is to say interface F00. IP address will be 172.16.0.1. 255.255.0.0, and no shut that guy. Then do interface F01, IP address 172.17.0.1. I think the thing you'll notice now is it's actually trying to look at these again. It's going through spanning tree protocol, so you see that they are yellow. If I do a show IP route, which is looking at my routing table as we've seen, you see that I now have 172.16 and 172.17. So even though these are in different VLANs, if you remember a minute ago, I couldn't ping from one to the other. Wonder what happens now that I've got a router involved that knows what's going on. Remember, it takes that first second to parse it, to kind of figure out the route. If you notice now that I've got a router involved, I actually can get from one VLAN to another, which that's actually really cool. But it kind of leads us into the next video, which I will call Router on a Stick Part 2, which actually demonstrates this using Router on a Stick. Have a good week.